Hi guys, I'm Jody Hand, Mrs. Hand Painted, and welcome to my channel here on YouTube. Today's video, I'll be showing you how to paint this really simple little pine tree landscape. It's just a really simple introduction to dagger brushes if you've never used one. I really like this brush. I can't use it enough for grasses and trees, and I'll show you exactly how we can create these pine trees using this fancy little brush that you might not have used before. So if you don't have one in your brush collection, go ahead and order one. This isn't a very expensive one. The Princeton Neptune series is not a super inexpensive brand of brushes, but it's also not super expensive. I can put a link to the one that I bought. I use Jerry's Artorama. You can also buy it at other online retailers like Blick Art Supplies. They carry Princeton brushes, or lots of other online retailers as well. So if you don't have one of these dagger brushes, I highly recommend adding one to your brush collection, and I'll show you how you can paint these trees. And let's go ahead and get started, and thanks for joining me. Let's have fun painting together. Hey guys, I'm just going to go over my supplies really quick. I am again using my Fabriano Artistico 5x7 watercolor block. This is the traditional white, the cold pressed, fine grain, however you want to call that. I like this because it's glued down on all sides, so if you're going to be doing a lot of water on your page, like I'm going to do for a landscape, it's glued down on all sides, so then your paper doesn't curl and buckle. If you don't have a block, then tape down all sides of your paper with some washi tape or masking tape, painter's tape, whatever you have. Tape down to your desk, or tape it to a piece of cardboard that you have just to keep it sturdy and flat. I'm going to be using a specialty brush today. It is a 1/4 inch dagger from Princeton brushes. This is their Neptune series. I have used this dagger striper that's a 1/4 inch also from Princeton. It's a Velvetouch line, and you can really see the difference in the style that they have. I'm not really quite sure what they're measuring a 1/4 inch on, because this is so much smaller than this, so I'm not really sure what part of the brush they're measuring to get that. But this is a pretty big brush compared to this one, but it's going to help us to make some really cool textures when we do pine trees, and I'll show you how we can do that here when we get to that step. I'm going to be using my 1/2 inch Princeton Neptune wash brush to do my wash across the back, and then we might use a size 1 round brush. This is the Princeton Velvetouch line, to make some little birds in our sky. Some other supplies you'll want is paper towel here. If you want to add some clouds in, we'll pick up some of the extra paint off of our background with a paper towel. I'm using my Daniel Smith watercolors here, and if you're curious about what colors I have in my palette, I do have a blog post about that on my website. You can check that out. And I've got 2 different jars of water here. One to wash my brush out will be my dirty water, and one for my clean water, because we will need clean water to do our background. I'm just going to kind of rinse my flat brush out. I seem to have such a problem with leaving paint on them that when I go to put that clean water down, it sometimes has a little tint of green or blue to it that I don't necessarily want or will be surprised by. So just going to kind of put a wash, and try not to get my hair in there, and just do a wash across here with just some clean water, just to start. I'm doing basically the entire page, but you can kind of leave, just for artistic effect here, I might just leave a little bit here off to the side that stays white, so I kind of have like a loose rectangle kind of in the middle, because what I want to do is have my, just for a little effect that I would like to try out, is just having like the sky, almost like the way that Bob Ross used to do paintings, where he'd have like a tree, he'd take his tape off and then there'd be a tree coming off the side. It was kind of neat, so I want to try something like that. For my sky here, I want to do kind of a lighter, almost turquoisey color, so I'm going to mix a little bit of my Phthalo turquoise with just like some cobalt blue. So if you don't have a turquoise in your palette, you could just add a little bit of green or a brighter yellow to it, just the tiniest bit, just to give yourself that turquoisey color. So it didn't end up as turquoise as I wanted, but that's okay. I'm just going to move that around into the water that's on my paper. And if you start to feel like you're dry, you can dip back into the water there and try to spread that around. All right, and like I talked about here, I'm not going all the way over to the edge. I didn't really want that to happen, so I'm just going to spread that around a little bit. All right, now I want to add a little bit of clouds in there. So working fairly quickly here before this completely dries, I'm just going to take my paper towel and kind of scrunch it up, my technical term here, and I'm just going to dab at my paper here just to lift some of that color up to make some clouds. And just kind of move it around. And if you don't like the way it's looking, you can just add another layer over the top and then do it again, but just keep in mind your paper will stain some, so you're not going to be able to get it completely back to white, depending on especially what colors you use, because some paints are a little more staining than others. Now before I add my trees over the top, I want to make sure that's good and dry, so I'm just going to use my dryer tool or my heat tool and just dry that up really quick. All right, it doesn't look like a whole lot right now, but we're going to add some trees in here. Basically, what I wanted to do was have a tree here, and then some small little trees. And then I can go ahead and add like a quote or something over that later on if I wanted to, or you could put something else in the middle. You could just put little birds off to the side, but I think it would be really fun to just kind of have a very simple looking painting. All right, so I'm going to get my brush wet, but one thing I will recommend when you're using these dagger brushes like this, just to maintain the crispness of the bristles, to not use this to get your paint with. Sometimes I will just get a larger round brush, like here's a round 8, and I'll use that to get my paint out on my palette. Or if you already have some, like I have plenty of green here, so I really don't need to. It's just when you're going into these pans or your little wells of your paint, it can really damage your brushes if you really have to dig in there with it, especially with something like this that we want to keep a nice point on. I don't want to damage these bristles and have it get all funky, because then I won't be able to use it for fun techniques like making trees or grass. So I am going to get some different greens here on my palette. I got some green gold. I just dipped into the wrong color, of course. Okay. Wrong water jar. Contaminated my clean water. Good thing I'm done doing my wash. So, and I'll do some sap green. And just get a couple different shades of green. And if you don't have a lot of greens in your palette, then just kind of mix up some different yellows and blues. And you can add brown in there just to kind of give yourself some variations. And there's some Undersea green here. So I'm just getting a few different greens on my palette here, and then I can take that and pick it up with my dagger brush. So I do recommend just kind of dipping it in some clean water just to get it started. And I'll kind of start with my lighter colors first, and then we can add some darker ones on top. All right, so I'm going to use that really fine tip, and I'm going to just go straight down, pick a point maybe about 2/3 of the way up there, and we'll do another one kind of even about right there, and then we'll build our trees off of that. Okay, so I'm going to turn my brush on the side so that this long side is facing toward me, and I'm basically just going to dab with the brush, and as we get lower we can start to use that angled edge a little bit more. And so I'm just going to go back and forth on the side. And I'm just dabbing very lightly with this. And kind of just turn your brush slightly. And then I can start maybe getting a little bit of darker greens in there and just mix it up. You can dab a little bit more in there. It's a little darker, just to give that some variation. This, I'm going to have this go to the edge. So I'm basically just dabbing. I'm using that as my center point, and I'm going back and forth and just changing the angle of my brush ever so slightly. This is just something that you just got to practice. So make a whole sheet of trees and just practice with it to figure out how you like to make them. It's just a little bit different than using a round brush. Trying this, you just get a different texture than you would if you used a round brush. Because with that, I feel like you get more circular or rounded branches. But if you do this, you get those really long, thin branches that I feel like it just gives you a totally different look. All right, so as you get down to the bottom, you want it to get longer. You're going to have some that kind of just pop up here and there. Some more going here. And I'm just starting out with just barely any dots, kind of like a little dot almost. And then as we go down, start to add in some branches. And if your brush kind of starts to get a little warped or something, that's just like happens when the water starts to come out of it. So then it might, from you pressing down, it might start getting distorted. So just dip it in the water really quick and that'll help reshape your brush. Alright, and then I want to add kind of some that are just really low in the middle. They'd be off in the distance, like these are the two that we're seeing up really close, and then we see just the tops of some trees in the distance. So I'm just going to kind of add some kind of just little tips here. Just kind of change up the shades of green you're using. That it doesn't look like one big giant rectangular tree here at the bottom. I just try to add a little bit of a darker green on a couple of them. And there, darken that one up a little bit. All right, now I want to add a couple little birds up here. So I'm just going to get some black, or you could do like really dark. I got some indigo here actually, maybe I'll use that. And I got my really small round 1 brush. All right, here's a little tip too. I'm noticing here that when I first started, these Neptune brushes do hold quite a bit of water, and I do notice that it started to kind of puddle here. So I'm just kind of soaking some of that up, and I'll just spread it around a little bit here. Just soak up a little bit of that puddle with my brush there. And if you ever need to do that, just take your brush, dry it most of the way on your paper towel, and then you can just kind of dab your brush into that water like this here. It's hard to see. And it'll just suck up that extra water. One reason we do that is because as that dries, the way that the paint dries, you're going to end up with these really hard edges right along the edge of where the paint started to dry along the edge, and then you'll have these little blooms from where the water puddled, and it gets this feathery texture. I mean, it could be a really cool effect in some cases, but if you don't want that on your painting, that's something that you will want to prevent by eliminating the puddling of water. All right, so I've just got a little bit of this indigo here, and I'm going to add some little birds up here. And instead of making like little, what's the lack of a better term, mustaches here, I want to do almost like a little V. And that'll look like a bird from the side. So you want one side to be straight, and then just kind of, so it actually looks like birds from the side. And some of these are better than others, but all right, so I'm just putting a few little birds off in the distance. All right, guys. I think that's a really cool looking painting. It's kind of minimal, and you could put this in a lot of different places. You could do it bigger if you wanted to, add some more trees in there, put some mountains in the background. But I really like how it turned out, and I think I probably am going to scan this and add a quote or something in the middle in Photoshop. So have fun painting along with me, and thanks for watching, guys.